I want to begin with a small joke that has more point than you may see at first. An elderly couple are chatting together presently, and she says, "Let's go upstairs and make love." And he says, "I'm not sure that I can manage both." Now, I have two things that I want to say to you. I must find out whether I can manage both. And I'll do my best. The first part is a sort of small historical sketch of things that have been happening for a considerable number of years. And the second thing is a sort of little parable of our work in Humanities Computing. One day in the winter of 1979, I went downstairs to the English department to talk to John Lambert, the director of University Computing. The reason I went was that a card index that I'd been running for many years had got completely out of hand, and I thought possibly computing could do the job more accurately and more efficiently, and so it proved. The idea that took me was this. In my doctoral work years before, I thought that if you wanted to know what a particular author meant by a particular concept, it would be rather a good idea to gather all the examples and study them, instead of talking in general terms about what the concept meant. Big 18th century concepts I was talking about, relative to Jane Austen: reason, imagination, fancy. When you looked at the detail of the instances, strange things happened, and it turned out that the words were much more interesting and complicated, and their presentation and use in the text was altogether worth pursuing. So this led me, long after my doctorate, to keep on going and looking at more and more ordinary words. I'll give you a single example and leave it at that. The word family in Mansfield Park. Now, family has about four main meanings. Our modern use, the nuclear family. Our second modern use, when I say something about no one on either side of my family has ever. It's extending back there into the ancestry. But until households ceased to have servants, there were two other important meanings. One of them was everybody in the house, from the master down to the groom and stable hand. That little housemaid. The other one is all of those people except the master and mistress. So in Mansfield Park, Sir Thomas Bertram's family can consist either of the nuclear family and its connections, Mrs. Norris and Fanny Price, or the whole household, including Sir Thomas and Lady Bertram, or the whole household except Sir Thomas and Lady Bertram. Now, throughout Mansfield Park, different characters play Jane Austen's kinds of tricky little games with each other, scoring points off each other, or playing around with the different meanings of that word. Now, you can see it, can't you? The people who are really in may take different attitudes to the people who are only on the edge, and to the people who are right outside. And the people who are on the edge or right outside have different attitudes to those who are really in. And all of this spins around that one word, family. So that in a kind of extravagant sense, you could say that the word family goes to the very heart of Mansfield Park. Now that's the sort of thing I found myself doing with card indexes. Going through the novel, finding every example, getting them together, finding which characters did what with which one, and thinking around that. Now, as you can see, when you move into more and more common words, more and more frequent words, card index, or even just seeing the things in the text and marking the line and page references, it just gets too hard, too complicated, too enormous. And so I went downstairs to talk to John Lambert, smoking my tobacco pipe as one did, and not seeing that on John's desk was a little sign saying, "Thank you for not smoking." So we got off to rather a bad start. But I stopped as soon as I found that the sign was there, and he was very forgiving. Now, what did he have to offer? Well, from the perspective of 2019, we were surprised to hear what he did not have to offer in 1979. There was no internet, there was no email, there were no big archives, though Oxford had just begun one. There was no decent scanning, they were in their infancy. There were no PCs or Apples. Just none of any of those things. But John was a very up-to-minute sort of guy. He was able to give me what there was. Access to the university mainframe computer, the VAX, and a concordance program called COCO. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with KWIC concordances. You take a head word, like and, or but, or the, and discover how many instances there are of it in the whole of the text. Arrange those head words alphabetically, and under each head word, put all of the instances in their textual sequence with page and line references. So you've got the lot. In libraries, of course, they have stop words. They don't count the, or and, or of. But I found that you needed to, because they said interesting things. The word the, for example, runs from maybe 3% in a dialogical sort of text like a play or Jane Austen, up to 7-8% in a descriptive novelist like Walter Scott. It's accompanied by other words, either way, of and from, go with the. If you go the opposite way towards the deixis, the intercourse of social conversation, pronouns dominate, and the articles and prepositions tend to drop out. So I've got these enormously interesting patterns as between different authors, and also in classic realistic fiction as between different characters in texts. So what I'd found way back up there with reason and imagination and family was true also way down here in the and of and but and from. So there we were. I went back upstairs and got our office junior, Elizabeth Carey, to work, and what we had was a keyboard and a monitor talking to the VAX downstairs. It registered what we did on magnetic tape, and she set about typing up Mansfield Park, and I went off to Cambridge, visiting fellowship. Very good support and help and advice. Came back at the end of 1980 with Emma and Northanger Abbey and Elizabeth's Mansfield Park, so we were in business. I applied for, limitations of the VAX. The big Jane Austen novels are broken into 3 volumes apiece. The 2 small ones are into 2 volumes each. 150,000 words in each of the big ones, roughly speaking, 75 in each of the small ones. The VAX could cope with only about 50,000 words at a time. One of the volumes. So you had to do Mansfield Park or Emma in 3 different goes. It made life a little bit tedious for a time until it got faster. Apart from that, nothing of great interest, I think. COCO was a good program in its way. I applied for an ARC grant the next year, and I have to thank Don Aitken, the chairman, for setting aside a referee's report that said support for this project would be a gross abuse of public funding. Thank goodness he didn't believe it, and we went into business. And with the new money, I asked Alexis Antonia here to join us as a research assistant, and she did. And she's been doing it ever since. At the end of the 1980s, Hugh Craig came on board, and he's been doing it ever since. We 3 have been the main team, so to speak. We've had marvellous support from programmers, research assistants, keyboard people, in all sorts of different ways. But we 3 have, I think, done most of it. Now, I should mention Keith Morgan, the Vice-Chancellor, who was interested in our kind of work, though he was a chemist. And when I retired, he set up our little centre so that I could keep going. Gave us the funds. Harold Love from Monash was a marvellous collaborator until he died. I think those are the main people I'd like to mention. Yes, that'll do. Now, over the years, of course, things got stronger and stronger. We had more hits than misses and more ups than downs. And it's all very patient, but all very rewarding. Gradually, not through our influence, but independently and of themselves, other people began to do things in other parts of the world. And two of them are here today, Ray Siemens and Gionni Di Gravio, Krakow and British Columbia, respectively. There are people in California and New York and the Netherlands and Britain and Würzburg in Germany, Frederick Humanities, and Krakow. Oh, and in Japan too. So wherever you care to look, people are doing it now, and it's really getting very interesting indeed. And I think that's about all on that side. How am I going for time, Marilla?
Oh, you're very good. You still have
Got a couple left?
couple left.
Good. Got a couple left we use for my parable. Prince Charles was asked what was the most valuable lesson he'd learned from public life. And he had an easy answer. Never miss an opportunity for a pee. Now, I can't match that, but I thought I'd tell you something about what I've learned from this sort of work. That's one corner of it. Where do we stand relative to our traditional colleagues? In my innocence, back in 1980 or thereabouts, I thought they'd welcome independence evidence to test out their ideas. This, alas, was not the case. Many of them ignored us. Many of them hated us because they were anti-number. Many of them despised us because we were mechanics. Many of them just too lazy to be bothered learning a new trade. A few of them took an interest, and there we are. Now, where does that leave us? After all these years, it leaves me reasonably comfortable on this basis. They can do without us. We can't do without them. They can do without us because they've been doing without us for centuries. And they can just go on doing what they do. We can't do without them because we have to know what they know. We don't have to follow their methods, but we have to know what they know if we're to understand our results. So it is not enough to hand over our work to mathematicians or computer people. As humanities people, we have to start from a humanities perspective and be solidly grounded. Hence my parable. This is the last thing. There's an ancient English village in which it is said that a great hoard of silver is buried in the common. And over the years, people search for it and never find it. The old squire happens to be a coin collector. He has his little trowel and his sieve. He potters about the common, and every now and again he finds a coin, and every now and again one of them's interesting, and he writes a little article for the Numismatist. And he's a happy old man, prospering in the traditional way. A young mechanic from the local garage borrows a metal detector, blazes about the common all over the place for 2 or 3 days, finds nothing, gives it up. Squire's daughter comes down from Oxford, history postgraduate. One of those theses that we all know very well indeed, firsthand. Theses that are almost finished, you know? I think we've all done it, haven't we? Just a few more weeks, which turns into a few more months or even several more years. Well, she comes down to stay with the squire and polish off the thesis. She knows enough to know that the great enclosure acts of the 17th and 18th centuries did strange things to commons all over the country. And it occurs to her that the squire's bottom field might very well have been part of the common long ago. She gets out the old maps and studies them, and indeed this is the case. So she gets hold of the metal detector, and bingo, she finds the treasure. The treasure, of course, goes to the Crown as treasure trove. She gets a reward, doesn't matter, finishes the thesis, does very well, marries a fellow historian, goes off to America on a good job for each of them, and they live as happily ever after as people ever do. And that's the end of my story. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
much. Can I ask for a photo?